I'm joined now by the mayor of Los Angeles, Karen Bass. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me on.
So your office, along with some partners, has just secured a major victory over the Trump administration. Can you explain what happened in court and what this lawsuit was about?
Sure, absolutely. Our attorney, city attorney, Heidi Feldstein Soto, joined a lawsuit of public counsel and the ACLU to stop the warrantless, essentially, detainment of people, and also that they have to identify themselves. I mean, what it amounts to is racial profiling. And frankly, you heard from one of the leaders of the administration, Tom Homan, that basically said physical appearance was one of the things they took into consideration. Well, just think about it. Los Angeles is 3.8 million people. Just about 50% are Latino. So what does that mean? 50% people are suspect of being undocumented. But what has been happening is that when people are detained, we don't know who is detaining them. We don't know where they are. They have no contact with their families, no contact with legal counsel, and they're masked men. And so the lawsuit basically says that this is a violation of human rights. This is a violation of due process. And so now they have to stop. A temporary restraining order was granted by the judge. Now, of course, we anticipate that the administration will file an appeal. But I do believe that the behavior has been so egregious that even on appeal, I am hoping that the temporary restraining order stays in place.
So what is the threshold now? Because before it was basically to that point, if you're brown, then you're at risk of being stopped and detained by ICE. And so now, given this new TRO, what is the new threshold for ICE to be able to come in and enact any of their missions?
Well, and if you go back to the beginning, the administration said they were looking for gang members, drug traffickers, and violent felons,
Right.
none of which you can determine from driving down a street. So now they have to have some basis. They have to have probable cause. They have to have a reason. And really, what has been happening on our streets is that these unmarked cars with masked men jump out of their cars with rifles and they will literally snatch someone off of a bus stop. How could they possibly know who that person is? Or they target certain businesses that they know hire immigrants, such as car washes. So now it's difficult to get your car washed in LA because they don't have the workforce.
Right.
Either they have been detained or the workers now no longer are want to go to work because they're feel fearful.
So are you confident that the administration, at least while the TRO is in place, is going to abide by the court ruling preventing this just, haphazard kidnapping of random people by virtue of the color of their skin?
Well, I hate to say it, but I think it would be an overstatement for me to say I'm confident
Yeah.
because I think that we have seen a level of lawlessness from this administration, and I'm not sure that I have a reason to think that is going to stop. So I am hopeful. I think that's a more specific word. I
Yeah.
think that the administration, they might feel confident that it's going to be overturned on appeal. I have more confidence, frankly, in the judiciary that this is such an egregious overreach and violation of our Constitution that they will say, you know what? Administration, you've just gone too far with this one. We have hundreds of Angelinos who don't know where their family members are. They don't know if they're still even in the United States because they've had no contact with them. So I think one evidence of change will be whether or not family members have already, and it should have happened because the ruling came down Friday, this is Sunday, whether or not they have been engaged with their family members, whether or not they have been able to receive legal counsel. So we should have a pretty clear picture of that in the next day or so.
Mayor Bess, when you're approached by a federal agency that by the way often won't identify itself, doesn't have any distinguishable insignia, which we're going to talk about in a moment because I have a separate question about that. But what are folks' rights when confronted with these people? Because that's like a giant gray area where I guess there's this just assumption that when you're approached by a masked man somewhere and they tell you to get in the car, now in 2025, you just got to comply?
Right. And no, you don't. But however, they will force you, they will physically force you. Technically, no. Technically, they have to have a warrant, and it's a specific type of warrant. But they're not adhering to that at all and are literally saying that they don't need that. They don't need probable cause. They just need to suspect that maybe you're here illegally. a complete departure from the original mission, which was hardened criminals.
Right.
How do they know if you're a hardened criminal if you're a woman that is selling fruit on a street?
Right. I do want to dig into that a little bit because that was the pretense on which this administration took office, that they were going to
Right.
enact these mass deportations because there were so many hardened criminals in the country. And of course, Trump's been beating this drum for the better part of a decade now. I mean, back in 2015, he was talking about how all immigrants were rapists and murderers. And so this
Right.
is the natural conclusion of that kind of demagoguery. And so what is your reaction to the fact that this guy came into office with a mandate to deport hardened criminals, and yet are now there are so many videos of them chasing down people who are working in car washes, who are working in construction sites, who are working in fields, picking the food that those very ICE agents then eat?
Right, exactly right. A tragic irony. And some of the people that are being picked up, number one, are actually here legally. They are going to their annual immigration appointment that they must attend, and they have papers. They go to the appointment and then they're detained there. Some people have actually been citizens, and some people have been undocumented in our city for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years.
Right.
They have been taking care of their families, paying taxes like anybody else, have not been a burden on our city. And in fact, our city could not function without immigrant labor. And we just experienced the tragedy of the wildfires throughout our county. Well, how are we going to be able to build without immigrant labor in
Right.
construction? And
Yeah.
some people say it's about 40% of the workforce. I believe it's significantly higher than that.
Zooming out a little bit, we are in this moment, and I had alluded to the fact that a lot of these ICE agents are not identifying themselves. They're not showing their faces. They have no insignia. What would the Republican Party of just a few years ago say about a federal government that deploys this like secret police force into
Right.
American cities and American states? This party of small government, and yet now those very people are either supportive of or completely silent about the fact that it's happening at the hands of their own party.
Well, and let me add to that. This is also the party of state rights, correct?
Right.
And this is an example, and I don't know when it's been done in history before, when the federal government actually seizes the authority from the governor and deploys troops that were never needed in the first place. And so, what I do believe that is happening with polling is that there's a lot of people who support the president's policies but object to the tactics that are being used. And I know from having served 12 years in Congress that my Republican colleagues there who know better won't say anything, and they won't say anything because they're worried about retribution. And I'll tell you something, before January 6th, they were worried about being primaried. Post January 6th, they're worried about the safety of their families, which is a profound statement to say
Yeah.
that if they depart from the party line, they're worried that they might experience physical violence. That's tragic.
Do you have any data or statistics on, based on who's been rounded up, what percent are folks who are actually criminals? What percent are folks who have had actual convictions? Because I want to try to suss out
Right.
the reality of what Trump is saying, which again is that he's going after these hardened criminals, versus the reality of the situation.
Well, first of all, the only information that I have is reported by the press, which is over 60% of the people who are detained have no criminal records at all. And even the ones that might have a criminal record, it's a minor criminal record. And so there's a few that are hardened criminals.
Yeah.
But how would you possibly know when you're just randomly chasing people through parking lots,
Right.
and people selling fruit on the street? How would you possibly know that? It's not like they've been searching for someone and they issue a warrant and they come, to get that person. And actually, before June 6th, when this all started, they had been doing targeted arrest. But this is a complete departure because now they've decided that anyone who is in the country without documents is a criminal.
Right.
And
I
if
mean,
that's your measure, then okay. But you're talking about taxpayers. You're talking about people. We have entire sectors of our economy in Los Angeles that cannot function without immigrant labor, be it legal or undocumented.
Right. I want to switch gears a little bit here. This doesn't have to do specifically with Los Angeles, but it, of course, has kind of taken over the national conversation. And so I would hate to miss the opportunity to ask for your reaction to the fact that so many folks in the Trump administration have predicated their identity, their brand on releasing these Epstein files. Now you've got all of these people in positions of power where they can actually substantiate the very things that they promised to do or that they were so worked up about before taking office. You've got Dan Bongino, Kash Patel, Alina Habba, Pam Bondi, Donald Trump, all of whom have said that they're going to release these files. What do you make of the fact that it went from that to now suddenly, all of these excuses? There is no Epstein client list. Okay, there is an Epstein client list, but it's a complete fake, and it was drafted by Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton and James Comey and John Brennan, and that was part of some deep state federal government cover up. But it happened in 2019 when the president himself was Donald Trump. And so, what do you make of just this whole disastrous response, the fallout from the Epstein saga?
Well, I have found it to be completely bizarre because to me, the obvious reason why they don't want to release the client list is because he's on it. There's tons of pictures of the president with Epstein as well as with the woman who served as his pimp. There's tons of documentation of that. The only part that I find strange is that it seems like all of these people are turning on the president. And so it just seems like utter chaos. I mean, I can understand why they would want to cover it up. The part I don't understand are those people that actually want to out him. Very strange.
Well, look, I live here in Los Angeles, so on behalf of me, and I know I speak for a lot of people who live here as well as folks in the rest of the country, thank you for fighting against this, and I hope that you continue to fight against what this administration is doing against, our immigrant population, documented and undocumented, because as you said, they are an integral part of this community, which wouldn't function without them. So thank you for taking on that fight and for your time today.
Oh, you're very welcome, and thanks for having me on.